November 2022. A crypto empire that had spent 2 years buying stadium naming rights, Super Bowl ads, and the trust of millions of ordinary investors has about 72 hours left to live. Customers are trying to pull their money out. The button spins. Nothing comes. In a matter of days, a company valued by investors at $32 billion will file for bankruptcy. Roughly $8 billion in customer money will be missing. At the center is a 30-year-old in cargo shorts and a t-shirt, once compared to a young financial titan. A year later, a jury will call him something simpler: guilty. This is the collapse of FTX. And this is how the money actually moved. Sam Bankman-Fried grew up in a family of Stanford law professors and studied physics at MIT. He began his career not in crypto but at a quantitative trading firm, learning to profit from tiny price differences at enormous speed. In 2017, he founded a crypto trading firm called Alameda Research. 2 years later, in 2019, he launched a cryptocurrency exchange called FTX. 2 companies, 1 founder. That overlap would matter enormously. An exchange is supposed to be a neutral middleman. You deposit your money, you trade. The exchange holds your funds in safekeeping. Alameda, by contrast, was a hedge fund that traded for profit and took risks with its own book. By 2021, FTX was one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world, and Bankman-Fried was a celebrity. He testified before Congress. He met with regulators. He pledged to give away his fortune, championing a philosophy of doing maximum good with maximum money. The marketing was everywhere. A major arena carried the FTX name. Celebrities and athletes lent their faces to the brand. The pitch was safety and legitimacy in an industry known for neither. Behind that image, prosecutors would later say, sat a hidden arrangement between the exchange and the hedge fund, one that customers were never told about. Here is the core of the case, as the government laid it out and a jury accepted. When customers deposited money on FTX, that money was supposed to belong to them, held, not spent. Instead, according to prosecutors, billions of dollars in customer funds were funneled to Alameda Research, where it was used for trading, venture investments, real estate, and political donations. 2 of Bankman-Fried's closest colleagues testified about how it worked. Gary Wang, FTX's co-founder and chief technologist, told the court he had written computer code that gave Alameda special privileges, the ability to borrow effectively without limit and to carry a deeply negative balance no ordinary customer could. Caroline Ellison, who ran Alameda and had once dated Bankman-Fried, testified that the firm took billions from FTX customers and that she prepared misleading balance sheets to hide the risk from lenders. She told the jury, in plain terms, that Bankman-Fried directed the fraud. Nishad Singh, FTX's head of engineering, also pleaded guilty and described a hole in the company's finances that kept getting deeper. 3 insiders, 3 guilty pleas. All 3 agreed to cooperate with the government. The money went in many directions. Prosecutors said tens of millions flowed into US political campaigns, often routed to disguise the true source. A separate executive, Ryan Salame, pleaded guilty to campaign finance and money-transmitting crimes tied to that effort. For a while, rising crypto prices covered the gap. But the arrangement depended on one fragile assumption: that customers would never all ask for their money at the same time. In early November 2022, a news outlet published a report on Alameda's balance sheet. It showed that a huge share of the firm's assets was a token FTX had created itself, called FTT, rather than independent, hard currency. The report raised a simple question: what was Alameda actually worth? A rival exchange's chief executive announced he would sell his holdings of the FTT token. Confidence cracked. Then came the run. In a matter of days, customers tried to withdraw roughly $6 billion. FTX, the exchange that was supposed to be holding everyone's money safely, could not meet the demand. The money was not there. On November 11, 2022, FTX and dozens of affiliated companies filed for bankruptcy. Bankman-Fried resigned. A veteran restructuring executive, John Ray, who had overseen the cleanup of Enron, took control. In his first court filing, Ray wrote something remarkable for a man who had seen corporate collapse before. He had never seen such a complete failure of corporate controls. Meanwhile, Bankman-Fried gave interviews and posted online, at times seeming to argue his side in public, even as investigators closed in. In December 2022, Bankman-Fried was arrested in the Bahamas at the request of U.S. prosecutors. He was extradited to New York, where the Southern District of New York laid out a sweeping fraud case. The trial began in October 2023. The government's case leaned heavily on the people who had been closest to him, Ellison, Wong, and Singh, who testified for the prosecution under cooperation agreements. On November 2, 2023, after a few hours of deliberation, the jury found Bankman-Fried guilty on all 7 counts, including wire fraud, conspiracy, securities fraud, and money laundering. On March 28, 2024, Judge Lewis Kaplan sentenced him to 25 years in prison and ordered $11 billion in forfeiture. In announcing the sentence, the Justice Department described it as punishment for orchestrating one of the largest financial frauds in American history. The cooperators were sentenced separately. Caroline Ellison received 2 years. Gary Wang and Nishad Singh, whose cooperation prosecutors praised, received no additional prison time. Ryan Salame, who did not testify, was sentenced to 7.5 years. Bankman-Fried appealed. And here the story reaches its most current chapter. On June 12, 2026, a federal appeals court, the Second Circuit, affirmed his conviction and his 25-year sentence, calling the evidence against him robust. A note on where this stands. As of this recording, late July 2026, the appeals court has ruled against him, but his legal team could still ask the full court to rehear the case or petition the U.S. Supreme Court. Neither step had succeeded as of this date. The core conviction stands. The very last legal avenues are, for now, still theoretically open. Strip away the private jets and the Super Bowl ads, and the FTX case is unusually simple at its center. An exchange promised to hold customer money safely and, according to the evidence, did the one thing an exchange must never do. It spent that money on something else. There is an unusual coda. Unlike most frauds, where victims lose nearly everything, the FTX bankruptcy estate has been recovering assets and repaying customers, with many creditors receiving more than the dollar value of their original claims. But that headline hides a real dispute. Claims are being repaid at their value in November 2022, when crypto prices were low, not at today's prices. Many customers argue that if their coins had simply stayed in their own accounts, they would be worth far more now. On paper, they are being made whole. In practice, many feel they lost the upside. That argument is still contested. The larger lesson regulators drew was old and familiar. When the same people control both the vault and the trading desk, and no independent check separates them, trust becomes the only safeguard. And trust, on its own, is not a control. FTX collapsed, not because crypto is inherently a fraud, but because a jury found the people running it treated other people's money as their own. If this breakdown was worth your time, subscribe. Next time, we trace another case where the numbers on the page and the money in the vault stopped matching. Follow the money.